Well, what are we fixing today? Today we're building something that I've been wanting to build for a while, and templates. We all know templates in Home Assistant is just a bit annoying. So I had been avoiding this. However, Home Assistant 2021.7 came up with my new absolute favorite thing. It's called trigger IDs. So you can assign an ID to a trigger and then call it later. So you can have a whole stack of triggers in an automation, and each one has a name, and then in the bottom you can say, oh, if it was this trigger that triggered me, do this or that or that. It's awesome. This is perfect for what I had in mind. I'm fixing my cheapo drop-in lock that I have in my front and back door. I wanted a way to push buttons so I could open it from the outside. Right now it's just got a button on the inside, or Home Assistant, or Google handles it. I didn't want to have to push on the phone, and so we ended up just playing. If we want to come in from a locked house, we come in the back door where I got a Z-Wave lock with a keypad. Take one of these babies. This is a RF433 keypad. Sonoff sell these as an interface to their fan. And for that, the buttons on it are like in hieroglyphics. They all do, and it functions, but the meaning is useless. I'm just going to use this as a keypad to open my locks. As I did that, I made it in an automation, had it working great. I decided to make it in a blueprint so that I can share it with everybody and people can just plug and go. I'll show you how to load this blueprint and plug and go. Well, let's go this way. No. Let's go this way. So here is my Home Assistant blueprint. This is in the community at homeassistant.io. It's where the blueprint repository is. I have an entry in here. I have it actually stored on my GIST. This is where I actually am storing them so I can store them in one place. But the link over here in the Home Assistant blueprint repository will get you there. And I have all the text here for how to handle it, what it does. I have a nice description, a change log. So this is available for you, and it's in a place where you can find it. The way this works is it takes 5 binary sensor entities. Now what I did was attach binary sensors to this 5 of the keys on here, actually all of them, but take 5 keys on this to attach them to a binary sensor. And if you want to use this for anything, you've got to do that anyway. Now you can either use that, or you could pull some little tricky safe house kind of thing if you want. So let's say you don't want a keypad in your back door, but you want to be able to unlock it with something. So maybe as you walk up, the PIR sensor triggers. Well, that can be one of the binary sensors. And then you open the freezer door, of which you have a sensor on, and you open the fridge door, and then you push the doorbell, and you do something else. You can add, if you do those things all in the correct order, and they're all binary sensors, you can use that as your trigger. But I'm going with the simple. But that could be kind of fun, How do you get into your house? Well, you open the fridge, you push the doorbell, you open the freezer, and you knock on the door, and away it goes. I thought that would be fun. If somebody tries that out there, let me know and show me, give me a little video of it. I'll add it to this. This would be awesome. We're going to load this from scratch. I have it erased from my system right now, done with the testing and all that. So let's just load it from scratch. I have to create 2 helpers. Configuration. You see it down here? Yep. Configuration. Helpers. Now we're going to add a helper, and we're going to make a input number. Now this is used internally in the thing in order to keep track of which button was pushed and which one needs to be pushed next. Minimum, maximum is fine. Needs to be at least 100 because of what we're doing. We're not going to use this part of this stuff. We're going to use this in the background as a place to store a number. And create. Then we're going to need to make a Boolean. So add a toggle. You could call yours anything you want. Those are done. And then the other thing, like I said, is you need binary sensors, and you're going to have to know what they are. Then we have to actually load the blueprint. So to load the blueprint, I'm just going to load it from here. This is in the community store. Now, this was built by the Home Assistant people to help people import blueprints. Works pretty slick when people have it set up right. So I'm going to do import blueprint, my URL, update. I'm going to open the link. And here is the import blueprint button. It has my information. As this is the blueprint itself. So you should be able to do preview blueprint. It does a test to make sure it actually looks like a blueprint, and it will import. And then you do import blueprint. And it's here. Really simple, right, guys? Create automation. And we're just going to call this S2 for the video. We'll scroll down, and here's where you fill in all of your information. The lock time on in seconds is the time that the input boolean will stay on before it shuts off. Maybe 9 seconds. There's a save button down here. Right down here underneath me. Blue, and mine is blue, it's save. We're going to do save. And your automation is created. Now let's go to Visual Studio Code. And just to make sure, we're going to go to automations. And there's the automation we just created, with all our information in it. This is what is actually executed when it triggers. But it's using all the guts from the blueprint in order to execute this. It sends this basically into the blueprint. So this should be all live now. Let's do a test. Let's see if it'll work. I'm going to push the buttons, and as I push the buttons, you'll see the buttons show up in order here if I do it correctly. When I get to the last one, pad enable should pop on. As I'm going along, you'll see this lock state number change. So you'll see that. Let's see. Now watch this change. It'll go 1, 3, 7, 15, 31. So in order for this button to be enabled, that has to be 1. And in order for this one to be enabled, this has to be a different number. So if you push this one and then that one, what it does is says, oh, that's not in order, I'm resetting. So let's just start by pushing them not in order. It's 1, and I get a 1, and then let's push another one. And that's not in order, and you can see that reset this to 0, and it says, try again, buddy. All right, so let's push them in order. Watch this number here, and watch the buttons go across the top. 1, 3, 7, 15. There, and we'll see the light came on. And it shuts off. There we go. That's how that works. And if you're opening a lock, you would change your input boolean. Let's just take a look at what I'm using. What that input boolean is triggering something, right? So in your case, it will trigger something to open a lock, and I have a sample in there if you want to see. But let's look at my automations under lock. This is what it's actually performing this time. And based on the state of the input, I'm toggling that light. That's how that one works. In my case, as my test sample. So it came on for 9 seconds. This input boolean came on for 9 seconds, and then as soon as the input boolean went off, it toggled it again and it went off. Pretty nice, huh? This is where my blueprint is actually stored and where it gets pulled from. It gets pulled from this GitHub gist. Let's open this up. And we'll go through what a blueprint is and what it's doing. All right. So in the beginning, in the blueprint here, there's some stuff here that you need just to get set up. This is the source URL. So if you ever want to go back, like if you want to do an update or something of it, then you would pull it from here. On a domain, this is an automation blueprint. I heard rumors that they're supposed to be able to be script blueprints, but we don't have a way to make them yet. So I guess they're working on that. But inputs is where the questions, that screen where the questions were asked, what do you want to attach to this? That's what this is. And it also feeds it into the automation. When the automation comes in, it knows how to do whatever. And these are the 5 buttons, the lock control and the sequence status and the timer. All the same things that were on that input screen there. We go down and we have some variables. Now, one issue about if you're making a blueprint and you want to do something with templates, even simple templates, any Jinja 2 stuff in templates, you cannot put the, see how you pull data in. This is one of the inputs that came in from the top section, and so this is the number, the helper number. You can use input this to pull it in to a variable, but you can't use it for some of the stuff down here, right? You can use it as a straight up entity, but you can't use it inside of a template. So what you do is you create a variable that's keyed off of that input, which is then pulled from the automation. So it just makes this cascade down and work. So that's that variable. And then I need to know when the last time that this number was changed. So I have basically there's a watchdog in here. I'll talk about that in a minute. And I need the current value of that entity, that input number. And then I also need to know what time it is right now. And these are stored as timestamps, these two. All right. We're setting this to single mode silent so that only one of them is running at a time. You only can push one button at a time. If you try to push another button too soon, it won't try to weird itself out. So you only can push one at a time. Here are the triggers, and here's the magic. Kind of regular triggers, but this here, ID pad 1, this is the trigger ID. So depending on which of when I push the first button, it's going to trigger on button 1, but it's also going to set that as an ID of pad 1, so that later in the action I'll know, oh, pad 1 was pushed, not pad 3, and then I can tell which happened, so I know what work to do with it. So these are the triggers for the 5 buttons. And then here is the action statement. This is what happens every time you push one of the buttons. It'll come down here, and the first section here is the watchdog. So it goes in, and the watchdog is going to try to set that binary helper number. And then it's going to say, if the last time that this was updated is more than 5 minutes ago, 5 times 60 seconds. So if it's more than, now it's more than, but basically, has it been 5 minutes since the last button was pushed? And if it has, it sets the binary sequence number to 99, which basically says after that, the only button you can push is button 1. If you push any of the other buttons, it'll just drop out and say that's not the right number. Otherwise, it'll just put in the number that's already there and say, yep, your timing is good. You can have that number and you can go. So then when I push button 2, it'll come down here and say, oh, it's not been 5 minutes. It's going to stay status 1 because that's the first number that happens when you push 1. And then it'll go down here and then it'll choose. In this choose statement, it's going to do one of these aliases. It's either going to say, oh, the trigger ID is pad 1. If that's true, then I'm going to set the number to 1 and drop out, and I'm done. So it just sets the input number. If you push button 2, there has to be two things that have to be correct. First, it has to see the trigger ID to be pad 2, and then it also has to make sure that that input number is 1 instead of float, so that's why you got to have it like this. So it says, oh, yes, the input number is 1. Yes, the pad was 2. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to set the sequence number to 3 because that's the next. I did it binary like. It doesn't matter. I just picked another number, and it was like the binary equivalent of both the 1 and the 2 on, which would be 3. And it continues to do that. If you push button 3, it has to be pad 3, and the number has to be 3. If you push the fourth one, it has to see it as pad 4, and then the number has to be 7. And if you push the fifth one, the pad has to be 5, and the number has to be 15. Once you get a legal pad 5 key with the right sequence number behind it, you're going to set the number to 31. This is just to give me a status. This number isn't checked again. Next, it enables the lock, so it turns the input boolean on. And it leaves it on for a time limit. And here's where that timer comes in that you set. And we set it to 9 seconds this time. So this is going to say delay for 9 seconds. It's going to then turn the input boolean off. And then it's going to reset everything and set the sequence number to 0. All right. Now, if for whatever reason you didn't press pad 1 or the number wasn't right or something it didn't like up here, anything it didn't like, it'll then skip. It'll do the watchdog, but it'll skip all the rest, all the choose statements, and it'll come down here to default. Default is going to reset. So it's going to set the input number to 0, and it's going to turn off the boolean in case it was on, and everything's happy. So it's going to basically reset it, and the lock is disabled until you get another valid key sequence. That's how it works. There are a couple of things that you need to know as you're going forward here. The buttons can only be used once for each code. So you have a 5-button set of numbers or escape room activities. You can only do each one of those once in each cipher, in each lock opening action. That's because the way the code is made. If you want to change the code, it's there. If you want some help, give me a shout and we can play with it a little bit. You can use the same blueprint for multiple cipher codes. For example, you have a dog walker, they need a code, and your wife needs a code, and you need a code. You can use the same keys again, but the suggestion is to use the first key as a different one, because the way the automation works, it'll help that out a little bit. The first key of the sequence be different, and then you can make the rest of the keys whatever order. And you can, if you use key 1 in one blueprint, you can use key 1 in another blueprint. That's fine. You just need to change the first one. You also need to create a different input number for each code. That's so that it can keep track of it and it doesn't get mixed up and confused. So you need a different input number for each code that you make. You can use the same code, the same blueprint for different lock devices. You just have to change the input number from up here, and you also need to change the input boolean at the end because it's going to open some other lock or do something else. Well, that's the video for today. It's a little bit shorter than I normally do, which is probably good for some of you because I know some of you don't like long ones. And if you want to skip the middle where I just explain things, that's fine. I'll have timestamps in there for you. Click, 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 click around. That's all awesome. Give me a like. Likes are good. I love likes. Give me a unlike if you think it sucked. Let me know why, though, so I can fix it. You can subscribe. I love subscribers. I'd like to get up to my magic 1,000 number so I can do some other things on my channel. That would be great. If you want to support me, look in the description. There's a lot of ways to support me. You want to send me some junk to take apart on screen, or you want to, buy me a coffee, that's all downstairs, right below me. In the meantime, have a good day, have a good week, and have fun with your buttons. Bye.